So, the countdown. We are headed for a perfect storm. There's a great confluence of events that are happening right now. Second, the Arab-Israeli alliance is happening before our very eyes. Ezekiel 38 is being fulfilled, Zechariah 14, Joel chapters 3, and Daniel chapter 11. Then we're going to talk about the Russian and the Syrian, Turkey, Iran alliance. That includes Hezbollah, Hamas, and other countries. And that's going to oppose this Arab-Israeli alliance. They're coming from the north and the northeast. Then we're going to talk about the China-Taiwan threat that's happening right now. China's threatening to invade Taiwan. The global energy crisis that's happening before our very eyes. And the pandemic, its impact on global shipping, and also on your shopping, your personal shopping, the supply chain. And finally, a couple other topics, cyber warfare, and the internet identity model that's coming, and of course, with some new things in the United States, a digital currency is being proposed, and the IRS surveillance of all bank accounts is also being proposed. Finally, Israel is probably, most likely, in the next few days, going to do a preventative strike, and the world will condemn them for this action, even though they have no other choice. And so we have a confluence of all these events happening. It's a perfect storm. And of course, God always fulfills his timing according to a festival calendar. We're currently in the church age, but it looks like Rosh Hashanah, the trumpets are about ready to blow. So, on October 31st, 1991, there was a tremendous storm that happened, and most people don't know about it because they've seen a movie, but the storm was gone unnamed. It was called The Perfect Storm. The movie wasn't very good at explaining what happened, but I'm going to try to do that. Hurricane Grace came up from the south, from Florida, and it intersected two Canadian fronts, a low-pressure front and a high-pressure front. This created 100-foot seas and also 100-mile-per-hour winds, and several vessels, sailboats, needed to be rescued, etc. So, the storm had a breadth that went from North Carolina all the way up to Nova Scotia, 1,500 miles across. No storm has ever been like it before or since. And so the storm was in a kind of an unnamed event. And the Weather Service never gave it a name, but they could just as well have done it. And so most of the coastline cities experienced storm surge. That day that storm came to shore, it was very sunny, and everybody was just doing their normal life, having a nice fall day, but they were caught off guard. So the problem was that the storm was centered over Sable Island out in the Grand Banks. That you probably heard about the Andrea Gale that was sunk by the storm, and it was probably one of the most severe, powerful storms ever to hit the United States, although some claim Hurricane Andrew was more fierce. So, we have a Gog-Magog perfect storm that's brewing right out of the book of Ezekiel, chapter 38 and 39. And it's going to affect every one of us. That's what this seminar is really all about, what's going to happen next. So, what we have here is we have a political history to go over first. Here you'll see the Middle East, you'll see Turkey to the north, you'll see down here in this coastline are all the Persian states, or excuse me, Arab states. On this side of the coastline are Persian states. And so they wanted to name this the Arab Gulf, but they've called it the Persian Gulf. One of our presidents called it the Arab Gulf to get a rise out of Iran. And of course we see the Arabs of Egypt over here. And so this perfect storm is confluencing right here in this area, the Persian Gulf. So, Turkey dominated the Middle East, and that ended in 1917 AD. And the Arabs and the Persians hate the Turks. Then, the Arabs, of course, were involved in their own nationalistic efforts beginning in 1917 with the Arab Revolt during World War I. And of course, that ended when Egypt signed a peace treaty in 1979 with Israel. But that's the Arab nationalism. The Persian-Iranian revolt finished in 1979 and is still occurring. It's a terrorist state, and we're going to learn a little bit about what's going on with that country and Israel. And finally, Syria and Russia entered into a friendship pact in 1980. Of course, the old Soviet Union supported Syria when the French left it in 1944, and they moved in when there was a power vacuum. So, we have also three cultural enemies, as I said. Those enemies are Turkey, the Arabs, and the Persians. And this is what King Faisal said in 1917. He says, the only thing I hate more than a Jew is a Shiite. And that's the antagonism between the Shiites and there he is, King Faisal, and the Sunni Muslims. And here we'll see Erdogan. He's the dictator of Turkey. And then we'll see, of course, here the red, white, green, and black flag, which perfectly fits Revelation 6, 1 through 8, the four horsemen of the apocalypse of the Arab states. And, of course, we also see the Persians there. So Ezekiel 38 and 39, those alliances, that scripture is very important, okay? And it's something that all of us should read. So it starts out that we see this alliance with the USA, Great Britain, Israel, Egypt, Jordan, UAE, Bahrain, and Morocco signed a peace agreement with Israel here back in August 2020. Oman and Qatar are going to do the same. The U.S. Central Command is headquartered in Qatar, by the way. Sudan joined in. Then, of course, Saudi Arabia has purchased the Iron Dome missile defense system from Israel, and they are close to also coming into a peace agreement. And, of course, Yemen, the part that's not in the hands of the Shiites, as well as Azerbaijan, which has got Iran very upset. Then on this side of the divide is Russia-China. China, of course, needs Iranian oil. Russia, of course, has other ambitions in the Middle East. They want a foothold. Hezbollah is a surrogate state. They've influenced Lebanon. Lebanon is now in terrible crisis. There's no power. Their currency has been devalued, and it's a destabilized border. Syria, of course, the Syrian civil war has been going on for a long time, but it's been put down by the Russians with helping the Syrians. And then we know that Hamas is in Gaza, in the Gaza Strip. Iraq is now becoming a Shiite state. It always was a Shiite country. Being influenced by Iran, of course. Turkey is also joining this alliance. They bought AS-400 missile defense systems from Russia, which upset the United States greatly. And Armenia and Indonesia are also being influenced at this time. And here we see the Abraham Accords signed in August 2020 between the UAE and Bahrain and Israel. So this Gog-Magog caliphate, what is that all about? Caliphate is somebody who, or someone, or some entity that leads a Muslim horde that has control. And we think it's possibly going to be led by a Syrian Alawite, will be an Alawite caliphate. Here's a person that's a potential to be that person that unites them. Of course, the Shiites are looking for a reincarnated prophet, Muhammad, or the hidden Mahdi, the 12th Imam. And this man's name is Sulaimi Hassan. He's the general of the Tiger forces that defeated the Syrian Democratic Forces. He's an Alawite, and which is a mixture of Orthodox Christianity and Shia Islam. And he is also a poet. He is the key leader and the hero of Assad and all the Syrian people that were against the civil war. So, the Shias are looking for the 12th Imam, that is the Mahdi, their Messiah. That's the foretold Islamic hidden prophet that's coming. And this person is supposed to arrive during a time of chaos. And that's what is in the Shia Persian minds, especially the Ayatollahs. And this man is supposed to unite an anti-Israel alliance, an army, a chaotic time of chaos of Muslim nations, and of course they're armed by Vladimir Putin, who looks like he is in fact the prophesied Gog of Magog. And of course we know that Magog is the name for Ukraine, and it's an ancient name from the 13th century, and we know that Ukraine is falling back into the Russian orbit now. So, moving on. Israel has got their back against the wall, and they must strike first Iran over nuclear weapons. Nobody else is doing it. Everybody's just kind of saying it's a foregone conclusion that Israel is going to have to lump it. But Israel does not feel that way. They went through the Holocaust. Iran has threatened to wipe them off the mat. They view Iran's nuclear weapons as an existential threat. That means their very existence is threatened. So what we see is that they've lost patience with the United States, who has made many promises that Iran would not get a nuclear weapon, and they don't believe that this is gonna make a difference, that the United States is not going to do anything. So Israel feels they must take action. They feel that the refining process of uranium has gone beyond the 60%, and they will have a bomb within a few weeks. So we expect this to happen fairly quickly here, within the next few days. Now, when this happens, the world will condemn this. Okay, they'll condemn this, because what will happen, it will set off a conflagration. And this has happened before, which we're going to see here in a short time on a quick video that I've added. Here's some more scriptures that you can read down here that define this event and what is going to happen. So we're talking about a conflagration, and this is why we're having this seminar, because this is imminent. So what is the conflagration? Naftali Bennett's going to describe what he has to do. That's the new Prime Minister of Israel. You're going to meet him. If you haven't met this guy yet, Ibrahim Raisi, he is the new president of the Islamic Republic of Iran. He is a dyed-in-the-wool murderer. He's called the Butcher of Tehran. Now, Israel themselves holds 80 nuclear weapons. If Israel feels that their existence will be threatened, annihilated, they have what they call the Samson option, which is an option to launch their nuclear weapons from submarines that they own. And of course, they're not going to use nuclear weapons because they know what that will cause worldwide. So they're going to focus, I believe, on this island, Karg Island. It's a non-nuclear option that they can do, and they want to do that because it will drain Iran's wallet. 90% of all Iranian oil ships out of there, and they want to get this done before China and Iran sign that $400 billion economic agreement, which also includes a military deal. And that is what they are concerned about. That's why they must get it done here quickly.
The Assembly will hear an address by His Excellency Naftali Bennett, Prime Minister, Minister for Community Affairs and Minister for National Digital Affairs of the State of Israel. May I request protocol to escort His Excellency. I have great pleasure in welcoming His Excellency Naftali Bennett, Prime Minister, Minister for Community Affairs and Minister for National Digital Affairs of the State of Israel. I invite him to address the General Assembly.
Thank you, Mr. President. Distinguished delegates, Israel is a lighthouse in a stormy sea, a beacon of democracy, diverse by design, innovative by nature, and eager to contribute to the world despite being in the toughest neighborhood on earth. We are an ancient nation, returned to our ancient homeland, revived our ancient language, restored our ancient sovereignty. Israel is a miracle of Jewish revival. Am Yisrael Chai, the nation of Israel is alive, and the state of Israel is its beating heart. My friends, for way too long, Israel was defined by wars with our neighbors. But this is not what Israel is about. This is not what the people of Israel are about. You see, Israelis don't wake up in the morning thinking about conflict. Israelis, like everyone else, want to lead a good life. We want to take care of our families and build a better world for our children. And that means that from time to time, we might need to leave our jobs, say goodbye to our families, and rush to the battlefield to defend our country. And that's what we aspire to do. Distinguished delegates, while Israel strives to do good, we cannot lose sight for one moment of what's happening in our neighborhood. Israel is quite literally surrounded by Hezbollah, Shia militias, Islamic Jihad, and Hamas on our borders. These terror groups seek to dominate the Middle East and spread radical Islam across the world. What do they all have in common? They all want to destroy my country, and they're all backed by Iran. They get their funding from Iran. They get their training from Iran. They get their weapons from Iran. Iran's great goal is crystal clear to anybody who cares to open their eyes. Iran seeks to dominate the region and seeks to do so under a nuclear umbrella. For the past 3 decades, Iran spread its carnage and destruction around the Middle East, country after country: Lebanon, Iraq, Syria, Yemen, Gaza. What do all these places have in common? Well, they're all falling apart. Their citizens hungry and suffering. Their economies collapsing. Like the Midas touch, Iran's regime has the mullah touch. Every place Iran touches fails. And if you think Iranian terror is confined to Israel, you're wrong. Let me tell you some news. Just this year, Iran made operational a new deadly terror unit, a startup, swarms of killer UAVs armed with lethal weapons that can attack any place at any time. They plan to blanket the skies of the Middle East with this lethal force. Iran has already used these deadly UAVs, called Shahid 136, to attack Saudi Arabia, American targets in Iraq, civilian ships at sea, most recently killing a Brit and a Romanian. Iran plans to arm its proxies in Yemen, Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon with hundreds, and later on thousands, of these deadly UAVs. So you can ignore it, but experience tells us that what starts in the Middle East doesn't stop there. Distinguished delegates, in 1988, Iran set up a death commission that ordered the mass murder of 5,000 political activists. They were hanged from cranes. The death commission was made up of 4 people: Ibrahim Raisi, Iran's new president, was one of them. Raisi also oversaw the murder of Iranian children. His nickname is the Butcher of Tehran because that's exactly what he did. He butchered his own people. One of the witnesses of this massacre stated in her testimony that when Raisi would finish a round of murder, he'd throw a party, pocketing the money of those he just executed minutes ago, and then he would sit down to eat cream cakes. He celebrated the murder of his own people by devouring cream cakes. And now this very Raisi is Iran's new president. This is who we're dealing with. Over the past few years, Iran has made a major leap forward in its nuclear R&D, its production capacity, its enrichment. Iran's nuclear weapon program is at a critical point. All red lines have been crossed, inspections ignored, all wishful thinking proven false. Iran is currently violating the IAEA's safeguard agreements, and it's getting away with it. They harass inspectors and sabotage their investigations, and they're getting away with it. They enrich uranium to the level of 60%, which is only one step short of weapons-grade material, and they're getting away with it. Evidence which clearly proves Iran's intentions for nuclear weapons in secret sites in Turkuzabad, Tehran, and Marivan is ignored. Iran's nuclear program has hit a watershed moment, and so has our tolerance. Words do not stop centrifuges from spinning.
To the distinguished representative of the Islamic Republic of Iran to introduce an address by the head of state.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Mr. President, I have the honor to introduce the pre-recorded statement by His Excellency Mr. Sayyid Ibrahim Raisi, the President of the Islamic Republic of Iran. Thanks a lot.
In the name of God, the compassionate, the merciful, praise is due to Allah, the Lord of the worlds, and His peace and blessings be upon Muhammad and his pure household and his select companions. Mr. Chairman, at the outset, allow me to extend my congratulations to Your Excellency for your election as the chair of the 76th session of the UN General Assembly. Ladies and gentlemen, Iran is the land of culture and civilization, the land of knowledge and spirituality, the land of perseverance and independence. The Iranian people are monotheist and patriotic. They have their unique identity and love to explore the world. For hundreds of years, our nation have safeguarded their right to self-determination and freedom against the hegemonists and have made their country the most progressive in the election-based political system in the West of Asia. The Islamic Revolution was indeed a great leap for the fulfillment of national and Islamic ideals of Iranians, including freedom, independence, and religious democracy. I, as the elected president of the great people of Iran, am honored to be their representative to convey to the world at large the message of rationality, justice and freedom, which are the three most fundamental principles of the life of the contemporary man.
An American surveillance drone, U.S. leaders said there had been no airspace violation to warrant such an attack. While the two sides argued about where it happened, military strategists were likely discussing how. The Global Hawk is jet-propelled, expensive, and one of the most sophisticated drones to take to the skies. Iran's military commanders said it was flying higher than a commercial airliner when it was brought down by a surface-to-air missile made in Iran. Iranian leaders said it was a significant display of military know-how.
From a military point of view, the detection of a drone is not easy. The radar, the missiles it was hit with were all Iranian-made. Those who are military experts, they know how significant this is.
Iran's arsenal is a patchwork of bought and borrowed technology upgraded over the years. Before 1979, the United States helped Iran develop its air defense system. After the Islamic Revolution, Iran purchased missile systems from countries including Russia and China, and worked with North Korea and Syria to develop targeting technology and boost its domestic military production. When George W. Bush was U.S. president, drone technology remained secret. Days after the shooting down, fishermen were still pulling wreckage out of Iranian waters. And state media highlighted other U.S. drones that Iran claims it either shot down or hacked into, landed, and copied. Reverse-engineered Iranian drones are almost identical to American ones. Iran's military has taught itself how to build them, and perhaps more importantly, how to break them. And it says if it has to, it can do it again.
I think the Iranians have planned their nuclear program in such a manner that it would take weeks, probably, of intensive warfare to neutralize their capabilities for a long time. It would take air superiority and would take bombing of well-dug sites that are spread all over Iran to make the blow such that it was irrecoverable.
اما باز شدن پای نفت به جزیره مردم خارج را ناخواسته روی انباری از باروت گذاشته. با توجه به تنش‌های همیشگی بین دو دولت ایران و عراق، قرار دادن این شاهرگ حیاتی در فاصله چند ده کیلومتری از عراق خاک را در وضعیت پرخطری قرار داد. در این حال نگرانی و دلهره از شعله ور شدن آتش در جوار این حجم از گازهای قابل اشتعال و مواد منفجره همیشه به طور جدی احساس می شود. هنوز 2 سال از پیروزی انقلاب نگذشته بود که موقعیت جغرافیایی و اهمیت استراتژیک خارج بلای جام جزیره شد و با حمله هواپیماهای بعثی عراق از همان روزهای اول جنگ جرقه به انبار باروت افتاد. شدت انفجارها و آتش سوزی‌ها و ویرانی‌ها به قدری بود که مانورهای اطفای حریق پیشین مقابلش بازی کودکانه به نظر می‌رسید.
سنگ و تقاط اینا رفت و تقاط
از جمله فروزان ابوذر و درود. میدان درود با 79 حلقه چاه به عنوان یکی از قدیمی‌ترین میادین نفتی با وسعتی بیش از جزیره خارگ در زیر این جزیره و آب‌های اطراف آن قرار دارد.
این میدان مربوط به 1340 هستش. Iran we have over to the right hand side here. Kark Island itself, the area we're going to be attacking, is all the way down here. Let's zoom in, the map will catch up in a moment. Let's get all the targets on board. So we have a jetty down here in the south, as well as the overall kind of holder of all these individual targets. And then we have a hell of a lot of oil tanks all the way dotted around here, which obviously stores all of the oil made at the refinery. And then this here is the oil refinery itself, so we're planning to hit all of those targets. Let's zoom back out, and the map will catch up in a moment. So Iran, they can operate out of Omidyar Air Base, Shiraz Air Base, and Bashir Air Base. Is this the Persian Gulf? Downhill. Oh. Right. So we have got all aircraft shown at the moment. We're currently flying almost just over Al Basra. Hopefully we get some good hits here. Come on. Okay. Let's go back to the flight view. Okay, picking up some ships around the area. Okay, back down again. We are picking up some ships around the area. There could be a lot of friendly activity in here, but remember the briefing did say there could be Iranian targets in here as well, or Iranian ships.
Okay, that was interesting. So the perfect storm is imminent. It's an event of collisions, and these are the things that are happening simultaneously at the same time here in our hour. And I'm not making up any of this. Okay, for example, China is threatening to invade Taiwan, and of course they feel that the United States is weak after the Afghanistan debacle, and that we are too focused on other things other than what they would do. So China's getting ready to do that. That could be a distraction for the United States should this happen. That will give the Iranian alliance the motive to move while the United States is busy focusing on something else. And then, of course, if the Persian Gulf closes, we know that the energy crisis will exacerbate. Right now, there is a shortage of coal, liquid nitrogen, and gasoline, oil throughout the world. And that has happened because nations did not stockpile energy because of the pandemic caused a slowdown in their economies, and they did not build any inventory. But if Israel attacks Iran and Iran closes the Gulf, the Persian Gulf, we could see gas prices of around $25 per gallon. I don't know how many gallons are in your tank, but I recommend that anybody watching this gets a hybrid or a plug-in electric car. Then we see that shipping already is having a problem at the docks because of the pandemic. What's going on is that ships are docked outside of Los Angeles and some of our busiest harbors because they can't get in because of the COVID protocols that every nation has, trying to stem the pandemic. And so there's lots of empties, the ships are backed up, and consumer goods that are imported are in short supply, and this is affecting exports as well. So, shopping, it may find that some shelves are bare in some parts of the United States and the world. The cupboard is bare because the supply chain has been disrupted, and also prices are nosing up because of inflation. Inflation is a direct result of governments printing money without taxing. It's a cruel tax. It affects everybody the same. Everybody pays the same percentage. It's not progressive. So when the United States prints $3.5 billion, which they did not tax, that means inflation is going to go up. That means your rent. That means your grocery prices. Somebody told me recently grocery prices have already gone up 30% from the last round of COVID payments that went out because the government did not tax that money. They simply printed it. and there's nothing behind it. The pandemic caused that, and the countries are struggling still with vaccinations and with controlling the pandemic. And the other thing that people aren't aware of is that there's a move to create an internet identity model. In other words, because of cyber warfare, cyber crimes, the internet provides anonymity, and that anonymity is what allows crime to occur. So they are working on an internet identity model. Everybody will be issued a name and a number in order to use the internet. I recommend you try fasting 1 or 2 days on the internet, not using your mobile phone, your credit card, your desktop, your laptop, and just see how dependent we have become on using the internet. Then, of course, digital currency. Every nation is considering digital currency. El Salvador, Singapore, China at one time was thinking about going totally digital. The United States is, in fact, planning to go digital currency. Once the currency goes digital, it'll be very difficult for organized crime. It'll be very difficult for people that operate cash businesses and don't pay taxes, like people that are landlords, people that are barbers, people that work for cash. They will be able to track you with digital currency. And there's one other thing that's happening in the United States anyway, is that the IRS now wants to examine every bank deposit of $600 or more. It is estimated that this will raise $80 billion in taxation. There's a lot of people that ride in the 4th of July parade that have been hiding their cash business for years and years. And for the first time, they are going to suffer tremendous audits. Tremendous audits. The IRS will ask, why do you have so much more money now than you did for the last 20 years? And there's going to be some hefty fines. The government is going to collect some money. And finally, we know that Israel's going to strike. They're going to strike Karg Island is our guesstimate, because 90% of the oil flows through there. And here's a drone. This is a Reaper, and Israel's got some good technology for drones, but so does Iran. Iran, of course, as we said, copied U.S. technology after we lost a drone over there during the Obama era, or several of them, as a matter of fact. But drone warfare is becoming a reality, a remote control, video game type of warfare. So it's time for questions and answers and discussion. So what's going to happen next? Let's start. Here's some questions that we can answer during this discussion. When will Israel strike? I'm thinking just in a few days, but I'd like to hear your opinion, if they will at all. And what will be the price of oil after the Persian Gulf closes? Iran closed the Persian Gulf in 1988 when Iraq struck Karg Island, and they mined it with the limpet mines. Ronald Reagan, of course, got involved, and the Sammy B. Johnson was hit and almost sunk, and the Gulf closed for several weeks. And it took minesweepers a long time to clean up all those mines. But once that Gulf closes, 25% of the world's oil transfers through that Gulf, and the price of oil will shoot up. The United States in the past few years has been a net exporter of oil. Recently, we have begun importing Saudi Arabian oil again. The only country that has any spare capacity that can do anything to increase oil output by about 5% is Saudi Arabia. And what will the world do once the Gulf closes, especially countries like India and China, which are totally dependent upon that oil, Japan as well. And so why does the United States seem to be absent from the Bible? I'd like to hear your comments on that. It's pretty hard to find the United States in the Bible. Everybody has their idea. I've got my own. And so our next steps in the next two sessions is this here, is that will Christians have to go through the Great Tribulation? And of course, to get that book, 3.5 Years, answers that question. And the seminar tomorrow night is going to is going to answer this question: is this the time of the Antichrist? And if so, what's his identity, his profile? We need to know that. And then finally, the third night of the seminar on Thursday, we're going to answer this question: how should Christians prepare for the coming conflagration? And how does the Lord provide a way of escape for all of us? Are you ready? Hope to see you again right here at lastchanceark.com.